Mac Maharaj. In 1964, he was sent to South Africa's notorious Robben Island prison for being part of the ANC's armed wing. He was, of course, incarcerated with Nelson Mandela and other leaders of the anti-apartheid movement. When he was released in 1976, Maharaj smuggled out the first draft of what became Mandela's autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. And after helping to negotiate the transition to black majority rule, he then served in Nelson Mandela's cabinet. Today, Mac Maharaj is spokesman to President Jacob Zuma, and he's deeply involved in the nation's memorial tribute to his former comrade. And he joins me now for his first in-depth interview on television. First of all, thank you and welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show.
I want to ask you, having been so close to him and so right there during the seminal struggle as he became a politician, what are your feelings in the aftermath of his death?
I haven't had time to reflect sufficiently. I have a job to do as a spokesman of the President of South Africa, and I have to do that by putting my feelings aside. Maybe there'll come a time later, but for the moment, let me say this. I've had time to reflect in the past, and I see my life as a tremendous privilege. I've been with the Mandelas and the Sisulus in prison. I've been in the harshest times. I've been there to celebrate our pain, share them. I've ate food with them sitting on our haunches. I've been in the communal showers with them because there were no individual showers. And so I look back at my life and say, what a privilege.
A privilege because you learned so much and you formed this ultimately successful political movement, but also you were sentenced to hard labor. What was the harshness of daily life in the quarry and elsewhere on Robben Island?
You know, Christiane, that's an amazing question, because I think the function of memory is such, because our struggle has triumphed. Whenever I go back and I reflect on Robben Island, I only think of the good times.
But if we had been defeated, putting it in the past.
If we had been defeated, I think we'd only see the pain.
That's right.
So the work at the quarry, well, to me, I had free food, free board and lodge, free exercise, plenty of sunshine, and I'm still alive.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. But let me ask you about what Mr. Mandela said about what he learned there and what he did when he came out. He said, I know people expected me to harbor hatred against whites, but I had none. In prison, my anger towards whites decreased, but my hatred for the system grew.
That is true. We all went through that experience, and I think that out of our movement, not more than 5% came out bitter. I think it is because of where we came from. We had evolved our struggle towards realizing that South Africa belongs to all black and white. We had striven to try and resolve the problems by discussion. We turned to the armed struggle and still said in our manifesto, this is a last-minute invitation to let's talk.
Now, as we see all these live pictures of the ongoing outpouring of celebration and farewell outside Mandela's home where he died here in Johannesburg, I want to ask you about the fact that he did reach out and the fact that many, and still, even in the latter years, thought he conceded too much, thought that he was too willing to, negotiate with the oppressor.
That is a misperception of people who think that we could have just
But some people have said it.
Well, those who say it do not understand the calamity that our country was facing. Our country could have been reduced to ashes through a bloodbath. Rwanda would have been child's play if we had a race war here. And there were times that we were on the brink of that. When Chris Hani was assassinated, we were on that brink.
Just before the election of 94.
And nobody could. 1963, we had no agreement yet sealed on the table. And Mandela went on television and he said, today a white man came from abroad and murdered our hero. But also today a white woman informed us who had done the killing. And he appealed to the people, keep your mind focused. We had dreamt of an insurrection, and an insurrection movement was possible. But it was the leadership of Mandela and the ANC which said, no, keep your eyes trained on the negotiation. And we found a formula, a bridge to majority rule and democracy by conceding a government of national unity for 5 years.
Of course, that was 1993. But let me ask you specifically, because to me this is just unbelievable, how Constant Viljoen came and wanted to sort of have a rebellion or a civil war. And yet it was Nelson Mandela who went to him and convinced him not to.
It was always our approach.
And he was the defense minister, is that right?
No, he was
head of security forces.
one-time chief of staff. But he had now retired from that position and as a general with a tremendous reputation and a high regard amongst the soldiers. And he had mobilized this. But our discussions were honed, and Mandela honed himself by understanding the enemy. He taught me in prison and forced me to study Afrikaans and read Afrikaans poetry. He said, if you are to ambush the force of the general on the other side, you need to know how he thinks. And he studied Afrikaner history and said to the general, yes, you have superior forces, but you won't win the war. You may win the battle, but never forever. And this made an impact because he said, look back at your own history. What we learned by looking at the history of the whites, which Mandela epitomized, was that the result of the war between the Afrikaner and the British had left a legacy of hatred. And we wanted to avoid that.
And that forgiveness is obviously what he is most revered for. Let's fast forward now, 20 years since those first elections. The promise has not fully been met. There is still a lot of wishes, really, that the current leadership of the ANC would be able to match that kind of heroic activity of Mandela. What do you think, and you're spokesman to the current president, what are the challenges now?
We were conditioned for more than 3 centuries, every ethnic group, to think only of their own and see the other with hatred and fear. We cannot remove that in 19 years. It is a project that we have to work at. We inherited poverty and unemployment in a world economy that is riddled with crises. You cannot build that in 19 years. What we have achieved so far is more than what any other country in its first 19 years of independence has achieved. And I think that we have got a lot of mistakes, a lot of acts of omission, and as well as of commission. But that's in the nature of work in progress. What is important is that we should be able to look at ourselves and see how to correct and find the line of march.
Mac Maharaj, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you.